Jamie, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are
Good.
you?
I'm doing great. You are one of my most favorite people in the whole wide world.
Thank you.
Every time I talk to anyone about you, I'd say, she's an angel on earth. Your energy is so loving, sweet, kind. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Can I
That
give you a
means so
hug?
much. Thank you.
Thank you so much
That
for
means
being
so
in my
much,
life.
especially from you.
Oh, thank you.
You know
But-
how I feel about you.
Thank you, but you are.
Thank you.
So Jamie and I are great friends, and we became friends very quickly. You know, I know your other family members, your parents, your sister, your husband, your children.
Everybody.
So I know everybody, and I'm so grateful for the friendships that we have, created together. And so one of the things that has been really inspiring to me about Jamie is just her journey as a parent. And I thought it would be, helpful to others about how she's, become the parent that she is, and how she's continued to evolve in her role as a parent. And I think it's really been a gift to your children with how you show up.
Thank you.
So could you just share with the audience your age, if that's okay,
Sure.
as well as your children's ages?
Sure. I'm 46. I'll be 47 next week. And I have a 15-year-old daughter, 14-year-old son, and an almost 5-year-old daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have a great husband who I just recently went on a ski trip with, Pete. He's fantastic.
He is.
And we become like fast friends. He's always cracking me up. We have this thing that every time he calls me, he says, answer the phone, he says, Keith Jones, as I live and breathe. And so now I try
We all feel that way about Keith.
and so I try to beat him to the punch, and I'll say, peace, sunshine, as I live and breathe. And so we just have this amazing friendship and this bro crush on each other, and it's really, really special. And so thank you for that. So I just want to talk a little bit about the first question: has parenting been easy?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Each phase has its own set of gifts.
Right.
I think.
Gifts. I like it. So tell me about what your parenting style was like with your first child, and what is it like now?
With my first child, my daughter, I was super involved and, very attentive. And now I've sort of evolved to more letting go, more letting natural consequences happen. I think the biggest theme now is really letting each of the kids have their own journey.
Right.
And I was much more enmeshed
Right.
and intertwined in their lives.
It's really hard for parents to let kids have their own journey.
Yeah.
And so why do you think that's important?
I think it's the most natural way to learn. I mean, maybe as they get older, the only way to learn. I mean, that's one thing. It happens when they turn to be teenagers. There is no other way for them to learn. And yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't control everything, right?
Yeah.
So as a parent, when you try to control everything, did that create a lot of suffering for you?
Absolutely. And for them.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
for them. I
and
think we
for
forget
them.
the part about
Yeah.
for them, right?
Yeah.
When I look back on my childhood, I think about my mom she controlled in a different way. Like she had, tasks and chores that we had to do every day. So she controlled from that standpoint. And she told us, like, this is what I expect in terms of behavior. Outside of that, she let us make a lot of choices. And she also let life do a lot of the corrective action, so to speak. She never raised her hand at us. She never hit us. My stepfather, on the other hand, he was controlling from every point of contact. I mean, verbally, he was controlling. I felt controlled emotionally with what I could feel or not feel. I was always off balance, not knowing what to expect. There was tremendous anxiety around him at all times. When he wasn't present, I felt anxiety. And he was also physically abusive. And so I saw two very different parenting styles, and there's no question which one I preferred, which was the one of my mom, which really allowed us to kind of find our own way. And to this day, my mom and I are very close, and I benefited from her allowing me to develop some resiliency along the way by her not rescuing me from certain situations. And she told us early on, I'm not coming to save you. so you have you got to get out of this on your own. So with that being said, tell me what are some of the gifts that you've learned or from each child? Let's start there. Let's start with the positives. What is each child? So your daughter, who's 15, you have a 14-year-old son. You know, I want to know, was it different, you know, because of gender, and as well as your youngest?
Yeah.
So the gifts with, let's start with Zoe. What were the gifts with Zoe?
The gifts with Zoe, she's very much her own person. And so I think, you know, I had to really, you know, it wasn't like we just automatically communicated well. And so I had to learn, I'm still learning how to communicate better with her. It didn't just happen as naturally. So I would say something, she'd hear something different. She'd say something and I'd hear something different. And so learning how to communicate so that she can hear me, learning to communicate so that I'm heard from her, which has really actually helped in my marriage too. Like it's helped with the communication because you're saying something and that person's not hearing it. It doesn't mean what you're saying isn't really helpful and wise. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's lost on them. They're not hearing it.
Exactly. And how was it with your son?
Jacob, I learned that, and you really helped me with this more than anything.
Oh, wow.
I think I learned that we need to have what your mom, a kind of more parenting more like your mom, where we have rules, and these are the rules of the house, and this is how you need. You know, we're expecting you to show up, and if you can't, there's just consequences. There's no shame. There's no, you know, punishment in that way. It's just if you want your privileges, here's what you need to do in our house.
Right.
And so that's been really helpful too, because it's helped even our relationship, because I'm not getting triggered and, you know, getting frustrated and trying to have conversations all the time.
Right, exactly. And with your youngest, Charlotte.
Charlotte?
Yeah.
Charlotte.
She's her own person too.
The good news about Charlotte is that I have your coaching, so I'm starting it earlier. Yeah. So I just am watching her. She's just, you know, she's doing her little tantruming thing, controlling thing, trying to get upset, and I'm just not reacting at all.
Right.
And I think that's been the secret with her, is just I'm staying firm, but there's no judgment, there's no shaming, there's no anger. It's just, sorry, that's not going to happen today.
Yeah. You know,
I get to show up loving.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you want to show up for everybody.
Yeah,
and
feels better.
Yeah, and the great thing is that you've come to this place of wanting to be your best self as a parent and letting go of what society tells you have to do, but what feels right for you, right? And you're doing it at a time where all three kids are still in the home. You know, some parents get it well after the kids are off and they're adults, and the parenting has had some impact. And you know, Rick has a great thing that he says is for parents. He's like, listen, if the kid turns out great, don't take credit for it. It had very little to do with you. And if the kid goes through some challenges, don't take the blame for it, because it wasn't just you involved either. There are other factors. And I think if you can stay pretty even keel, I think that's the key, with just not parenting, but with life, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
Stay balanced.
I do. Another thing that really helped me was in my group of friends, I wasn't the most holding on the tightest and I wasn't the loosest. So I thought I was pretty balanced in my, you know, group of friends. We were all different ones. And the more that I talked to other people outside of my friend group, and you sharing stories about your mom, just being open and vulnerable to sharing other things, and then I was able to be more self-aware about some of the things I was doing that I had no idea I was doing.
Right.
I didn't know I was doing that. I didn't know any different. So by being vulnerable, it really helped me acknowledge some of the things that my part in it, that I was creating or sustaining.
So like, let's go through each kid and let's kind of talk a little bit about your role. Like how, not from a judgment standpoint, but things that you were unconscious about, like, hey, now that I know, I'm doing this differently. So can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Like with my oldest daughter, she would want something and I would go bend over backwards to try to make it happen for her. Why wouldn't I? Sure, we can try to do that. I'll try to drive you there. I'll try to take you to the store to see if you need new soccer cleats,
Right.
that kind of a thing. Just didn't even think anything of it. But partially her personality, but also just part of life, it wasn't helpful.
Right.
It actually sent mixed messages. I didn't mean to send those messages, but it actually sent messages that I don't think were helpful for her.
What message do you think it sent?
Entitlement.
Yeah.
And not having as much gratitude as I would have hoped for her.
Yeah, my mom was, this is an area that she was very big on, was um, being appreciative, like we had to work and do everything. Like if hey, you want to go somewhere, you let her know long beforehand where you want to go so there's significant notice. She wasn't dropping anything because you wanted to go somewhere, you need to do something. And so we really had to become long-term planners and thinkers if we wanted her help or participation, which was very helpful. And that serves me well. I remember the first time that I wanted to go somewhere that was totally out of the way. She's like, they have bus routes. You can get a bus. And I was like, bus? Like, I don't know how to ride a bus. She's
Yeah.
like,
I don't know if I want to go that
yeah,
badly.
I guess you're learning. And that was her thing. Like, I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to go that bad. She's like, I guess you don't want to
I
go.
don't want to go that badly.
And so that was just such a great lesson from my mom. And, one thing my mom, like, I don't remember my mom telling me she loved me. Like, I felt it, but I don't remember her saying that. And I didn't know how much it really meant to me to hear it, but it means a lot to me to hear it. If I don't hear it, it doesn't mean like life is over, but it is really great. And you are super loving and kind and affectionate to your kids. So you're balancing out being a parent, quote unquote, when you need to be, with being instructive and teaching, but you also bring to it the loving space and affection. You're so great with that. Even if they're pushing it away, you still deliver it. And I've seen some moments when they don't want to have it. Like, hey, I'm gonna love on you anyway. And I think that's great because that means the love is unconditional, and you show up like that all the time. So I like that. You learned with Zoe how you may have been missing the mark and what you're doing differently now. That's really, really important.
Yeah.
Tell me about with Jacob.
Jacob, I learned with Jacob that, I'm a kind of a flowy gray person, and he really needs much more structure.
Right.
And so I'm learning it's not good enough for me just to show up my best self. I need to show up in a way that he needs me.
Right.
And so I'm figuring it out, which you're really, really
thank you.
coaching me on and teaching me, and about how to show up with structure, but then also get to be that loving self too. And so getting to do that.
Yeah. With Jacob, man, he's such a good friend to me. Like, I love Jacob. Do you know how much I love
I
Jacob?
do.
I had the opportunity to be with him on Monday, and I think I called you the next day thanking you for the opportunity to hang with him, because he's such a great young person. You're around him, everybody loves him. He's a leader. He's super helpful.
Good soul.
Oh man, he's such a great soul. Like, he can be with anybody. From someone who is in their, late senior years, 60s, 70s, 80s, to someone who is maybe like a 3-year-old. Yeah. He can be with anybody and not just pass the time with them, but be fully engaged to where you feel like you are being seen by Jacob, where you feel like he values you being there. And he gives it back. Like, he's phenomenal with me. And anytime there's been some kind of challenges, it's been great then too, because we're able to talk through it. I remember I remember Jacob being a little disappointed when, because Jacob and I started hanging out before I started hanging out with his parents, and we just do little training sessions. But as anyone who's ever worked with me, we're not just working out. We are creating a space together in which we both get to learn from each other. We both get to grow from each other. So it's very much a relationship that's mutually beneficial. At least that's the kind of relationships I want. So I don't see clients, I see friends, and we're both friends, just happen to be together where we're working out, but we're growing together. And so Jacob loved us being able to have these kind of talks and stuff like that. And when he was here, I would still do things that encouraged collaboration. Like, hey man, can you help me set this up? Or can you wipe down this mat that we finished with? And so I went, sure, Keith, I got it. And a lot of times he anticipated what I might need. Like, hey, let me get you a bottle of water too. So it was great like that. But every once in a while, as is with myself and my friends, we also help each other grow, which means we coach each other up, especially on the blind spots that we can't see. So it would be great that I could coach Jacob up here in this space of our studio and other spaces, But once it became friends, his parents, that was not cool, because there was a side of Jacob that I got to see where he put on his best self. But his parents knew the other side of Jacob, the shadow self, which we all have, that shadow.
Absolutely.
And so Jacob was like, no, this is not cool.
Yeah, wait.
You want to share a little bit about how he felt about us becoming friends?
Yeah, he basically came home and was like, you ruined our friendship. I was like, sorry.
Yeah. And so we kind of worked through that. It took a few months though, because Jacob was dug in.
You're like, I got this.
Yeah, I was like, I got this. Don't worry about it. I got it. And now we can totally be that way.
Yeah.
And because he became open to his friends also being his coaches. I mean, you want the kind of friends that can be straight with you in a loving way that can coach you up to be your best too. Because of that, like, I felt very comfortable inviting him on a ski trip that only really adults go on. And we had a great time in Park City, and he showed that he was mature enough to handle that. And I lean on him quite a bit, and I can share things with him, and it's just really, really cool. So thank you for sharing what, with Jacob, of how you had to make things black and white. So it's different for each child so far.
Yeah.
And with Charlotte, what?
She's like a mesh of the other two. So I use all the tools from them, and I use them all for her. She's got fierce personality, and she's another one who, we have to work on gratitude and kindness. And she. Yeah, and just being firm. Like, if you give in to her once, that's it.
That's
so
it. She's
there's
running.
just, you can't.
There's no pulling it back.
There's not a lot of gray with her.
No, there's not. Oh, so that's so fantastic. Can you tell me about what has been some of the biggest challenges that you've had to work through as a parent, and what was the outcome of it in terms of your growth?
Thank you. Yeah, I would say I had to become unmeshed and untangled and really let go of their journey to be their own journey, which I learned that in a really painful way. Mm-hmm. And I had no choice, I basically had to.
Do you mind sharing?
Sure, yeah.
Because I think that'll be helpful for people can to picture it.
Sure. Jacob, when he was 12, it was sort of uncovered that he had this really unhealthy relationship addiction with Xbox. And with maybe all or most addictions, I don't really know, I'm not an expert, but there's always underlying issues. And so it just brought up a lot of stuff for our family. And I was sort of blindsided, like, how could this be happening? I don't understand. I'm doing all of the things I need to do.
I see him every day. I'm in his life
every day. I'm limiting how much Xbox he has. I wasn't, like, compared to even half the kids, I have rules, how is this happening? And I had to really dig deep and let go and be vulnerable. And again, I think it really comes back to being vulnerable and asking for help when you need it. Letting people in your life is hard because it's easy to stay in your bubble and then everything's okay. But when you let other people in, like with you sharing, and then we had a nanny at the time, and she helped show me things with love, when you show people things with love, that I didn't even know that I was helping to create or sustain. So again, with Jacob, getting him the help that he needed was a beautiful lesson on letting go and letting him know it's his journey. And so this day, I'll say to him, hey, how are you feeling? How's that going for you?
Can you talk a little bit about that journey of getting him help? Because I think I think it's important that people understand, there's help available, but the help may be in varying degrees depending on what the person is challenged with. Yeah.
So we called an educational consultant, and she gave us some options, and the best one at the time was wilderness. And talk about letting go. I mean, I didn't know very much about it. I didn't know anyone who had done it, and it just felt like the next right thing. And he somehow got himself on board about it.
Yeah.
Probably helped to my parents.
Your parents were, so great.
Crucial, yeah. And so he found his way there, and he lived in Idaho in the wilderness, with a group, a very well-trained group, for 10 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so once a week, we had a phone call once a week, read letters, and that's it.
I know.
We spoke with a therapist once a week with him.
Yeah, and Jacob, from what he told me was that he struggled with anxiety really, really bad, and and he's such a great kid. He's a great athlete. He is, not that this part matters, but he's a good-looking kid. So that's not an issue that he has to deal with at school. Some kids have to deal with that. Like I had to deal with at school that a girl didn't think I was attractive, and she would tell everybody about it. So I hated going to school. I dreaded it. I felt bullied. And this was not something that Jacob experienced. But, you know, he was well liked. Everything that it was just super, super positive, but he had this anxiety. And I think it was part of the pressure he put on himself to be perfect all the time. And it's the same thing that I did too. So Jacob was really open with me. And I think it was the friendship that we developed because I saw him the night before he went off to this wilderness camp. And I remember how, and I barely knew Jamie then.
That's right.
But I knew her parents. And so Jacob spent the night there before he went off because it was a great place to go because in case, you know, Jamie would probably be in tears.
Yeah.
And
yes.
yeah,
Not,
you
for
know,
sure.
exactly. And then, but you know, your parents were just so great, and they were great, like safe space for him
Yeah.
to be launched into this new experience. And he was like, Keith, man, I didn't know if I was ever coming home. Like there's
Yeah.
no, I mean,
That
there's
you don't know.
you don't know
There's not a
anything.
time you go and you're just doing your work as you're there.
Right, exactly. So you're ready when you're ready.
Yeah, yeah.
You
When
ready?
you're done
Come
your
on.
work.
That's
Did you do your work? Okay.
No, I guess we're staying longer.
Let's just do another week or two.
Exactly. So and Jacob, is he a great storyteller?
Yeah.
This kid is a great
He's a great
storyteller.
storyteller.
So he was like, hey, I got anxiety and we're doing this like repelling exercise. And he was like, and you got another kid up there who's belaying you. And he's like, now my anxiety is out of control, but the kid who's holding me, his is worse than mine. And so he's just telling me about all the lessons that he learned along the way, and he learned how to deal with anxiety. He learned mindfulness in that practice, and he learned the importance of a morning routine. As anybody who's ever watched our podcast, you know that I begin my day with a morning routine because it centers me and it roots me into being my best. And dealing with things like anxiety or depression or fear or anything like that, I'm more equipped to deal with that in a very healthy way. And so Jacob would tell those stories. He'd tell the story like he had to become responsible in ways that he hadn't before because, you know, his parents were doing a lot for him, making sure he was ready for this, making sure his book bag was packed and everything else. So he said that the first day they're there, you know, they're giving us a wooden spoon. so he told him shortly after he was there, he lost his. And so he's like, hey, can I get another spoon? It's like, no, but you can carve one. So he had to carve his own spoon out of wood. Talking about lesson in resiliency.
Beautiful.
And it was like, that's how life showed up. So I asked him, like, dude, you ever thought about like, this is not for me, I'm just quitting? He's like, yeah, I thought about it, but where am I gonna go? I'm in the wilderness.
Yeah.
I'm not. He's like, this is it.
There is no other way out.
There is no other way. This is the way. So
This is the way.
choose this. And so he did that, and he came back from that, you know, just a different person. And what I love about it was he shared it with incredible courage, I think, to go through that process, but the courage to share with others and what happened.
Yeah.
And he felt okay with me asking him anything about the experience. I learned a lot too through it. And it was just really great. But that was a testament of your love because you knew that the way that life was prior to him going to that wilderness camp, that couldn't continue.
Yeah.
Right? What was the cost to your whole family dynamic?
Oh, yeah, there were explosions, there were tears, there was discomfort, there was fear.
I mean, throughout the house, right?
Throughout the house.
While this was going on with
Absolutely.
the gaming.
And I'm sure there's trickle down things that we haven't even examined that we're not even sure about now. You know, and that's okay. That's part of life. But for sure, there was a whole family thing. Plus, I felt really helpless. My husband felt helpless. That was hard on us together. It's hard, I think, on parents always when your whole job is to take care of the kids and you don't know how to do it best.
Right. And then the impact to both Zoe and Charlotte, there was an impact of all of this, them watching this meltdown and everything, the struggle, they're watching that. So what was the impact to them? Because we know that a lack of civility and an environment can affect not only the people that are directly involved, but those who are observing it or watching it. And when, like, I don't know if this happened for you, but it certainly happened in my home, that my brother was consistently in trouble. And he's 48 years old. He's still in trouble. He is no stranger to law enforcement, I say all the time, and not the good side of it. No stranger. And so my brother would always be the focus. And so in a lot of ways, that was okay. And that means that I wasn't in trouble as much.
Yeah.
But there
You
was
learned
also,
independence, I'm sure.
Yeah, I learned a lot of independence, but there was also a cost of it. Is there was some attention that I would have benefited from my parents.
Absolutely.
So that was one of the things, but it's not all on my parents. I became really skilled at getting away with things because the attention was over here. And so there are some ways that I developed that were not healthy for me. You know, being secretive, hiding behind my good grades. I can get away with not always being kind as I could have been, of being a better mate in the house or collaborating more with others. I could get away with all that stuff because all the attention was on him. And so, is that true in your home?
Yeah, and actually, I went through that also in my house. And so, one of the things too that I think relates to Jacob is he's this amazing person, and then there's the shadow, which we all have. And I think when we don't integrate those selves,
Yes.
it's, you know, I always was more of the perfectionist. I always, you know, did everything as everyone would joke around and say, oh, you're doing everything perfectly, you do everything right. But I knew I wasn't doing it perfectly or all right. So then you shame.
Right.
And I didn't know how to integrate that to be truly authentic.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and I know that I could see that happening with Jacob. So when you called him out on that, he was like, what do you mean you're combining my selves? I'm just my best self with you. What do you mean you're going to talk about my shadow? So I relate to that, which it sounds like you do
Right.
some of that too.
I had to because my shadow, like I didn't have anyone in my life. By the time someone became powerful enough to say something to me, I had a way of making it not possible for you to correct me with the way my energy showed up and stuff like that. And I think there are a lot of people like that who've gotten away with not being the best self for a long time because they can hide behind their other achievements,
Yep.
which are valued in our society, grades, sports, whatever, these things we value. So there's this other side of us that we have that people either they see it, but they kind of turn a blind eye to it. Like, well, at
Right.
least they're doing this.
Right.
And so I was able to get away with a lot of that, but you don't get away with it forever. It comes
Yeah.
back and it sabotages
right.
your relationships. For me, it sabotaged my relationships with the people that I dated. For other people, it unravels their relationships. They can't have close, girlfriends or close, male friends. It'll find a way to show itself if you don't work on it. And so that was one of the costs of me getting away with that thing, with that kind of behavior. And gratefully, that's no longer the case.
Yeah.
The shadow and the dark side and the light side of me is all integrated now. It's such
Yeah.
a healthier way to live.
It is.
And having people around you that you can share it with.
Absolutely.
Now, I know we only have a few more minutes, but let's talk about your youngest.
Okay.
Okay. So, in what ways has she presented some challenges? You see anything come to mind?
Just sometimes she's not always the kindest.
Right.
And she can, I think it's true for a lot of young, she's not
Right.
even 5, but also you can feel her personality. Can be,
Right.
she's very bossy, controlling, she likes things her way.
Right. And so I know you have gotten really good at it. Your husband Pete told me he's working on it because he's like the other night, Jamie, took some time for herself and practiced self-care, which we encourage. And he's like, I tried everything with Charlotte, and she was having none of it.
Yep.
And so I know he's still learning how to just to be there and to get her engaged no matter what. And you hold, like in this area, you have to be black and white with Charlotte.
Yeah.
Do Jacob and Zoe feel empowered since they're older siblings to be like, no, we're not doing that. You're
Yeah.
not being kind.
Yeah.
So they're good
Absolutely,
about it.
they're very good about it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Good, because you guys.
I mean, we tend to laugh a lot, so
Right.
and the good news is no one's upset about it.
Right.
There's a lot of laughing. We're like, really, Charlotte, really?
Right.
No, that's
That's
not
not
going to
gonna
work.
happen.
Yeah,
Man, so now that you're,
but it's playful a lot
Yeah.
of times.
Now that you've learned all that you've learned over the years, and you continue to learn, how do you think you show up as a parent now?
I'm very humble. I am very humble. I used to think I had a lot of the answers. I used to think, I was doing a pretty good job. I mean, I was always tired. I'd always have plenty of things that I was complaining about that I didn't do well. But now I really feel humbled. And the good news is I feel like it isn't, I'm just supposed to show up good enough. I show up my best self as much as I can. And and hold a loving space for them, and create the space in the house with our rules and kindness and respect, and in doing that I get to show up my loving self,
Right.
which feels better.
Now, and finally, how great is it to have your husband Pete be a partner, with you on this journey with the agreements in the home for the children?
I feel really grateful for that, and I think about that sometimes too, because it can be really overwhelming, and it can feel lonely, and it can feel, sometimes you could go down that, why me? Why is everyone else's life look so much easier? My friends aren't struggling with this, and why me? And so, which is easy to redirect, that's not helpful. But when you have a partner to share that with you, it's really, really helpful.
And someone who
it's a beautiful gift.
Someone who backs you up. Like
Yeah,
you guys are,
yeah.
like, these are the agreements and these are our family values. No, this is what we're doing.
Yeah,
Instead of
it's like a brick wall.
Exactly. Instead of one person, trying to do it all, makes a big difference. Were you
And
gonna say something?
yeah, and at times, that brick wall sometimes is more symbolic. Like sometimes I'll call you and be like, okay, give me a pep talk. And then my brick wall is up again. My husband walks in the door, I need 5 minutes.
Right.
Brick wall. So there's a lot of ways to get the brick wall. It's not just having two parents.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's so great. I'm so grateful for our friendship, and like I said, I've learned so much from you. If there's one thing that you could say that may be helpful to parents out there who are trying to create that nurturing space to not only have their kids accomplish where the goals are, but also really show up as their best self, as a kind individual who serves and contributes to others. What do you think, from your experience, is one of the greatest gifts that a parent can give to helping accomplish that?
This is a gift that you helped us with and you gave us, but I think it matters, for you as a family to sit down and create a family plan. What is important to you? What are your values? Sometimes you don't even think about what are my values, and then think about how does that look like in your house? What does that mean? Well, I want my children to, have gratitude. So what does that mean? And so thinking about those things, how that's incorporated in your daily life, because that's what it looks like, your daily life, every day. How are they showing up? What happens when you're not respectful to me? Well, you lose a privilege. What is that privilege? Have it written out so everybody knows.
Right.
And it's that, just saying it isn't enough. And so
Right.
having that and having the whole family in on it.
Exactly. And everybody being, participating.
Yeah.
Like mom and dad
Yeah.
also being accountable too.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it just makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Jamie, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's
This is so
great.
sweet. Thank you.